All right, folks, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Nico. I'm a solution architect here at Tigera, and today, throughout this session, we'll be talking about Kubernetes Multi-Tenancy and how Calico and Calico Enterprise can help you enable that. So if you haven't kind of joined us before in those sessions, they run, for an hour. Try to make it as interactive, at least, with chat and so forth. So if you have any questions throughout the discussion here, please add it in the Q&A answer. I can't see them right now. I can't see the question right now until I'm done. Stop sharing my screen, but happy to answer them then. Now, as I mentioned, we do those sessions on, we do 1 or 2 a week actually, and try to focus on various areas, around Kubernetes and the ecosystem, and where kind of Calico can help with various topics from networking and network security and so forth. And today's session, we'll be talking about multi-tenancy. As I work a lot, with customers, and I've been working in the field for quite some time around, containers and Kubernetes, and I see a lot of use cases around multi-tenancy. So I wanted to use this discussion to talk about multi-tenancy. So a bit about myself. As I mentioned, I'm a solution architect at Tigera. I was previously at Docker and prior to that at Cisco. And pretty much been working with containers and networking and Kubernetes and cloud for the past couple of years, and run some of those sessions here at Tigera. This session will be recorded and will be added to the events page on our site. So if you miss any part, if you want to go back and watch it, it will be available for you as well as the slides. So today's agenda will, for some of you who are not too familiar with Calico and what we do, we're going to do a quick, 5-minute overview, and then we'll jump into Kubernetes multi-tenancy overview, concepts, and primitives, and talk about some of the Calico Enterprise capabilities to help with enabling you to run multi-tenant environments with Kubernetes, and talk also about some compliance and take some question and answers towards the end. So if you haven't heard of Calico before, Calico is a community-driven open source project that started around the same time as Kubernetes, and it kind of drove a lot of the CNI spec as well as other open source initiatives to help with all things around pod networking and pod network security, and we went even beyond that to kind of protect virtual machines and host-based workloads beyond that. It's a very kind of ubiquitous project right now. It's open source. It's one of the common CNIs that is available for you today. And why some users kind of use Calico for various reasons, but we can summarize them that one is it's kind of blazing fast architecture. It's using native Linux capabilities, providing layer 3 networks and even kind of layer 2 networks to network the pods within your Kubernetes environment. It is massively scalable, mainly due to the using BGP as a core routing protocol, which is highly scalable because it kind of runs the internet, and it kind of allows a lot of the users to connect, have hundreds and thousands of actually nodes and deployments at scale. It is used today by the industry, and it is trusted and adopted by AWS, Google, Azure, and IBM as a standard for network policy for all the managed Kubernetes, as well as embedded for many other solutions like Docker Enterprise and Rancher, as well as OpenShift. We are, aware of, many clusters out there, more than 150, 160,000 clusters, known clusters that are using Calico today, and a lot of our customers are using Calico as well, and Calico Enterprise. Switching over to Tigera and Calico Enterprise, basically the company Tigera is behind the project Calico, and we use kind of the power of Calico open source, but extend it with a solution called Calico Enterprise that adds many functionalities and solutions that address a lot of the enterprise requirements. You can see here some of our largest customers in the financial, automotive, tech, healthcare, and so forth. So it's those customers are trusting us with by using Calico Enterprise to solve some of their key challenges around operationalizing and securing their Kubernetes network. Calico Enterprise is a hybrid and multi-cloud solution. You can basically run it anywhere you run Kubernetes. So we have customers and users on managed Kubernetes instances. We have some that are on-prem with OpenShift and Rancher, and other solutions as well. So wherever Kubernetes runs, you can run Calico and across different environments as well in multi-cloud and hybrid environments. So that was a quick recap for what is Calico. So hopefully that gives you a good sense of what we do. I'm kind of made a bit of assumption that some are familiar with it, but just in case you were not, just wanted to do a quick recap. So let's switch gears and talk about Kubernetes Multi-Tenancy. So many of you probably are familiar with the concept of multi-tenancy. Even that's not something kind of new to even Kubernetes. But of course, there's a new way of looking at it and kind of understanding it with Kubernetes. But let's start with an example, a scenario, right? With if you're kind of part of the platform team for an organization, right? You take on this journey of trying to build Kubernetes as a platform and provide it and operationalize it for various tenants or various teams or groups and organizations within your environment. Now, the steps or kind of the process here is, you create a cluster, you go through the requirements, you create a cluster, and provide that cluster to your tenant A here. I create, of course, as part of that, create the infrastructure needed. And this is kind of the same, regardless if this is a managed Kubernetes or kind of self-managed. Still, there is some type of operational step here that needs to be taken to provision and operationalize the environment. And you start kind of managing the environment. You provide the control plane, nodes, usually, 3 or 5. You provide the worker nodes. You create this full setup for a tenant. Probably define some type of an SLA and dedicate some operational team to manage the environment for various application teams as grouped as a tenant. And you see the kind of the applications get migrated, so that's great. Life is peachy at that point, so it's awesome. Now, let's say you have another organization comes on play and they hear about all the great things about Kubernetes, and they go through the same process. They highlight certain applications that want to migrate to Kubernetes, so they put in another request for you to provide them with a Kubernetes solution. You go through the same process, provision similar environment, control nodes, 3 of them or 5, some worker nodes, create the necessary setup, set similar SLAs, start managing the environment for them, and give it a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, and applications start migrating, and things are great at that point. So you have now 2 clusters that you're managing, at least those 2 clusters. Of course, if you have different environment, different stages, you might have more even for 2 tenants. So your success is kind of great within your environment, and you start seeing more and more requests. 10 more organizations hear about all the great stuff and the platforms that you're building. They're seeing the business results of moving to the cloud and moving to Kubernetes, and things are great. But now you have a lot more demand for operationalizing separate Kubernetes environments, even if they're managed, managed through a cloud provider. But you see that there's a pattern here, there's a trend, and it's becoming more, it's unmanageable and costly. So you start kind of questioning the approach you're taking around, if there are other solutions to provide different groups with various, their environments to deploy their application, but at the same time, not have to deal with all this kind of sprawl of creating those, various Kubernetes clusters. So this kind of brings us to the topic here, and multi-tenancy. So multi-tenancy is, you hear about multi-tenancy to provide a shared resources, a shared cluster, but at the same time provide some level of isolation for the end group. Now, from what we've seen, there's at least two types of multi-tenancy, right? Type 1 is when you as a platform team are providing either Kubernetes as a service, if you're providing a platform for your internal teams, for your internal tenants and organizations. And this is where, multiple groups or tenants share the same cluster to run their applications side by side, utilizing the same set of infrastructure resources, compute, storage, networking, and of course the control plane itself. So as you can see here in the diagram to the right hand side, you might have different tenants, and what you're seeing, the control plane here is shared, the worker nodes are shared, except they both are abstracted, shared resources, and different tenants have start using this same cluster, same environment, but they're doing it in a multi-tenant secure way. This is of course providing platform level isolation. So you're providing taking into consideration that the platform is shared, and you're providing it the level of isolation at the platform level. And one key thing here to remember is that those tenants are groups that are going to use Kubernetes, CLI or through a CI system or a UI around it, but they are actual Kubernetes users or groups, and they will access the Kubernetes API. In most cases, unless you are like a cloud provider or some type of a PaaS provider, most cases the tenants here are internal to your organization or your company, right? So they're there's a level of trust that those tenants are within your organization and within the scope of your organization or company. And in terms of the compliance requirements, they vary, right, depending on kind of the workloads. But as a platform, the requirements from a compliance, from standardization, is really really varying, kind of depending on your set of your internal set of requirements there. Now let's switch over to the other type of multi-tenancy, where it's more tailored toward external services that you're going to use Kubernetes to run software on. It's more tailored to offering a SaaS software, SaaS service, most likely, in which you can run different instances of a service per external user or tenant. So here, the word tenant is actually not an internal group. It's more of an external user or customer that is going to be using your service. The tenancy are opaque to Kubernetes. They actually don't care if this environment runs on Kubernetes. They do not have access to or need access to Kubernetes APIs. And this is more of an application layer isolation. That's why I kind of refer to it as an instance of the application that needs to be kind of managed here. It is not mutually exclusive from multi-tenancy type 1. So you can actually, you can have or create an environment where you're, for example, have a SaaS solution that you want to offer, but also have different teams internally that are creating that. So there's, they're not mutually exclusive. They can work hand in hand. Now, in terms of compliance, right, and some regulations and compliance requirements, most of the time, if you're offering any type of a service in this day and age, there's some type of a compliance requirements, and we've seen a big trend around SOC-2 is required for those type of for offering those type of services, and therefore there's aside from the internal compliance requirements, you have to now care and kind of go through SOC-2 for your service to be compliant with this type of requirement there. So hopefully that explains kind of at least the two types of multi-tenancy, and we'll kind of focus mostly on type 1, but we'll also get to type 2 because they're both very interesting in terms of kind of design consideration for both. And as I said, they're not mutually exclusive, so probably many of you have either to or are doing one or the other. So what are the benefits of multi-tenancy? I want to, at least there's 3 in working with a lot of customers, of course, reducing the cost by utilizing the same cluster control plane, compute, storage, networking resources. So you don't have to create a cluster and spend more money. And from an operational perspective, an operational cost to acquire those resources and continue spending on them. Of course, you're going to be able to increase resource utilization by driving kind of higher density of workloads on a given infrastructure. The utilization of compute is going to be higher, as you add more and more tenants, and of course the reduce the operational overhead from a management perspective, from day-to operations, from monitoring and operationalizing and manning basically the set of infrastructure that is needed to support your business. So at least there are 3 key benefits from doing multi-tenancy in either form that I described earlier. So let's look at the key Kubernetes multi-tenancy primitives, and I really like this kind of diagram that showcases that multi-tenancy is something that definitely can be achieved with Kubernetes, but it's not something that you're going to just wake up one morning and say, hey, this is something that we are doing. There's certain there's a process around, there's design requirements around it, there's definitely considerations around it. But the core of it around kind of enabling multi-tenancy is going to come around the inherent primitives that are available within Kubernetes to allow and enable that, right? So there are at least 6 primitives, of course, starting with namespaces. As you're all familiar, that namespaces is a mechanism to organize and separate kind of and abstract logical entities for your deployments. So a lot of times you're going to have a set of namespaces for your different tenants aligned to the tenant in this case. Second, where we're going to spend a lot of time today is around network policies and isolation, all things around making sure that from a network and network security perspective, the tenants are isolated and they are not introducing, if one tenant does something by mistake or there's any issue with it from a network perspective, you're protecting other tenants. Third, resource quotas. This is, of course, a primitive to ensure that every tenant is using what is a set of resources. It's not just consuming resources and it needs, and it's not stepping on other tenants when it comes to resource consumption. Fourth, of course, a definition of the tenants and the alignment of tenants from a user and IAM perspective, and defining the tenants themselves. That's part of the step in ensuring that you have a clear definition of how you do your groupings for your users, and followed by 5, which is kind of the RBAC and policies, and how granular you want to create those policies to provide for those tenants and different roles that you're going to create for enabling multi-tenancy for your environment. And there are other kind of aspects within Kubernetes. Finally, it's if you have a hard requirement for multi-tenancy, this is where you kind of default back to, separate hardware, and maybe you can, even within the same cluster, you still have a mechanism to align separate resources, separate worker nodes to certain tenants. So that alignment is something that also can be done with Kubernetes. So hopefully this kind of explains what are the key primitives that Kubernetes provides. and you still need to kind of operationalize and design around them. But those are key to doing basically multi-tenancy within Kubernetes. So let's switch gears. Now that we kind of described multi-tenancy, let's switch gears to see how I'm going to go through 7 ways that Calico Enterprise can enable multi-tenancy and help you enable multi-tenancy based on what we just described. So from a multi-tenancy perspective, Calico Enterprise can provide around three key pillars around tenant isolation, monitoring and alerting, and basically all the compliance and reporting needed for you to kind of be assured that you can actually are securing your multi-tenant environment. Now, those are the high-level pillars that are needed, but in terms of the seven specific functionalities or solutions within Calico Enterprise, let's go through them one by one now. So first and foremost, of course, network policies for tenant network isolation. As you create different tenants, you have long list of kind of available approaches to how you want to secure each tenant. You can achieve network isolation per tenant by applying network policies, with a default deny, or you name it, on a pod or namespace or service account level to protect all the tenants' network security and keep it within the tenant, or ensure that even if it want to access any shared resources, it's actually doing it securely. You can set things in the rules to kind of deny and log traffic across tenant namespaces, take certain actions around those, and manage the overall network policies that are going to ensure that from a security perspective, you're only allowing the traffic within the tenant's environment or namespace, and blocking it and logging it if it's trying to cross namespaces. We also have an egress set of enhancements and policies called DNS policies to ensure that when you are as you have different tenants, maybe you're accessing different databases within your environment, you have certain DNS policies that would ensure that a tenant can only talk to its respective, its corresponding database when it's trying to make egress connections based on what we call DNS policies. And this is kind of also the same for other external resources that those tenants may need to access, like public APIs like Twilio or any other cloud services, or any other services within your environment. So that was kind of the first one. Second is once you have those policies, right, it's important to both kind of enable the tenants to create their own set of policies, but also have a mechanism with what we call the tiered approach, the tiered security policy approach, to have uniform hierarchies to ensure that global rules and global policies are adhered to and enforced. If you have a set of guided InfoSec-based policies that need to be enforced across all tenants to protect both the tenants themselves as well as the whole environment, those are going to be enforced first. So by using this approach, you can ensure that higher tiered and higher precedence policies are enforced first, while giving the opportunity and the power to the individual tenants to kind of create their own set of policies to protect their own applications and define their own set of policies to define those rules for their own applications within the tenant. The third one is really critical around kind of compliance reporting and dashboarding. We provide a summary reports and detailed data around both per tenant, you can do it, or across the board for what's protected, what's not protected, the number of pods that are running and how they're protected, and some additional compliance reporting like CIS and that can be running on an ongoing basis and generating those sets of compliance reports for you to help you track and understand your kind of compliance posture in your environment. This is really critical, especially in multi-tenant scenarios. The fourth here is kind of audit logs. Of course, everything when it comes to the deployments of applications and all the things that are around creating policies and any interaction around the networking and network security is logged, both from like all the kind of the actions that the admins do, or even individual application or tenant users do. All of it is version controlled, and you can have a track record of all the API and UI based interactions with the environment here. And this is also critical in the case you need to, you're going through any auditing and ensuring that you are taking the right measures to secure the different tenants running in your environment here. Calico Enterprise also provides an in-depth threat detection and protection and mitigation for Kubernetes. What it helps you do is that in the case that there's any security or malicious activities in one tenant environment, Calico Enterprise can use machine learning to help you pinpoint and stop any malicious pod activity if it's trying to do something that is suspicious, or trying to escape a tenant secure namespace and so forth. So we have a set of built-in functionalities to pinpoint and mitigate and stop and mitigate those sets of attacks. And this is another layer of not only reactive, as a proactive layer to ensure that any attacks that are going to happen within Kubernetes do not affect or stop and do not affect other tenants in your environment. 6 is around kind of alerting on malicious pod activities. Of course, you want to make sure that you set up the right set of, you're aware when there is an event where and suspicious admin activity is going on. If there is a reporting of any data being blocked or a DNS activity that is suspicious, you can set certain thresholds and integrate it with your own CM or alerting solution to protect you against those malicious pod activities. And we provide default templates available for you, so you can easily just tweak a couple of values, and you have a set of alerting systems to alert you when things go not as planned. Finally, of course, RBAC is really critical for anything around Kubernetes, and we use Calico uses RBAC on Kubernetes RBAC for defining different roles to not only administer the cluster itself from a networking perspective, but you can actually assign certain roles for the tenants themselves, so they can actually view and have full visibility into their application deployments and application traffic, and all that is, as I said, is RBAC'd. What you see here is a flow visualizer for all the flows that are going on in the cluster, but they can pinpoint to their own namespace, to their own tenant, and only see what is what is theirs to see, and it's all backed by RBAC. And they can also see the flaw logs, that advanced flaw logs that we have in place that are backing what you see here from the flow visualizer, and those are also RBAC'd. So those were kind of the 7 key functionalities within our platform that actually help with enabling you to run multi-tenant multi-tenant workloads and define different tenants and secure different tenants in your Kubernetes cluster. Now let's switch over. I mean, what I was talking about kind of referred to, especially in type 1 multi-tenancy, where, as I said, the tenants are internal to your organization, internal to your environment, to your enterprise, and they're accessing Kubernetes. So all those kind of primitives that I talked about, RBAC and namespaces and quotas and network policies. All of these are great, primitives for internal tenants because they're going to be using Kubernetes, and I want to make sure that you're actually providing a secure mechanism for them to do so in a compliant way, in a secure way. But let's switch over and see, what's the case if you're offering a service, right, where the tenants are going to be of type 2, where they're actually going to be external to your environment. And I work with a handful of customers who are actually going into that, and it's SOC 2 is definitely an area where there's definitely a challenge, right, around it. So let's take a look at how Calico and Enterprise helps with that use case. So an overview for you folks, if you are not too familiar with SOC 2, it's a set of criteria developed by the American Institute of CPAs that offers guidance and certifications for companies that handle sensitive customer data. And in this day and age, really, that is a very broad, pretty much every company, every software, or even every company is becoming a software company, and every company is type of offering some sort of a SaaS offering or moving to a SaaS offering for their services. And at some point, they're going to need to handle sensitive customer data, let alone if there's, for in the healthcare or medical industries or in the financial industries, there's additional sets of requirements there. So pretty much any company that is offering a SaaS product, any company that is offering a PaaS product, an IaaS product is going to be falling and need to kind of be required to go through SOC 2. Now, SOC 2 itself is based on five trust services criteria, TSCs, that are security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. Now, of those five, right, those kind of break down to 9 what are called common criteria, right, that are listed here on the right-hand side. Now, we took a look and we kind of helped with some customers kind of go through those, but specifically number 6, 7, and 8, the logical and physical access controls, system operations, and change management are critical, especially from a network and network security aspects. And this is where Calico Enterprise can come in and actually help. The problem is that when as companies kind of move to Kubernetes, those are 3 key areas where they saw a lot of challenges when it comes to kind of being compliant with SOC 2, because using existing physical separation, VM-based or kind of existing perimeter firewalling is not really going to work when it comes to moving to Kubernetes because of various reasons, mainly because of the dynamic nature of where the workloads are going to be running, the dynamic nature of the IP addressing, the dynamic nature of just overall deployment processes here. So this is where Calico Enterprise can come in and help because of this change in Kubernetes and the new set of capabilities that Kubernetes and cloud native designs have brought up to our ecosystem. There has to be a change in also how we go through compliance. So basically, those are the 3 areas of how Calico Enterprise helps SOC 2 meet SOC 2 criteria. The logical and physical access controls by kind of making sure that the tenants can make policy changes, and you provide a subset of policies and enforce them per tenant. And then tenants can make their own policy change within their segment, right? And the system operations monitoring, of course, customized compliance and reporting around that, as well as the change management from an RBAC and Audit Logs to make sure that you're SOC 2 compliant. Now, if we map some of the SOC 2 requirements, those are the sections that we kind of discussed earlier. In section 6, 7, and 8. And the requirements, I'm not going to read this out. You can see it in front of you here. But I want to talk about, as a theme, you have the requirements for implementing logical access security measures to only authorized systems only can access certain tenants. And here, tenants, again, it's not Kubernetes users. They're actually external users. But you will still want to make sure that you're, if you're running an instance of a database for a customer, only authorized users can access it, and Calico Enterprise helps organize endpoints as we mentioned, create a policy to only ensure that only authorized systems can access them, prevent and block any traffic that is not coming from an authorized system, and kind of go with a standardization around kind of default deny. So anything that is not whitelisted as authorized is going to be blocked. So that's kind of more along like layer 3, layer 4, and the logical separation, logical access that Calico brings to the table here. From a monitoring and detection perspective, I kind of explained this earlier on, but it's also important to keep a running inventory of all ephemeral workloads, a running inventory of all the pods, all the services that that you have. Keep a track record of that. Easily be able to identify and associate, an IP address or where it's running to the workload itself and to the tenant itself. So that correlation is really important. Monitor and analyze your findings around any threats. As we described, there's an integrated IDS for Kubernetes with Calico, and that can automatically quarantine workloads when there is any suspicious activities, and you can alert based on that as well. Review any network flow logs that are going to tell you more about the type of attacks and how it was quarantined and all the information needed for you to kind of do a root cause analysis on those issues. Finally, from a change management perspective, not only we can provide a mechanism to and we log everything when it comes to changing different policies and have role-based access control on who can make those changes, but also you can review all those changes and see the impact of those changes before you actually do them. So this is really critical in multi-tenant environment because the last thing you want as an admin or an operator or security or a SecDevOps is to apply a set of policies or any policy and have a global impact that is going to be catastrophic or going to introduce any downtime across multiple tenants. So by allowing you and providing you the capability to actually see the impact of a certain policy across a single tenant namespace or across all namespaces, you can actually have a better idea and avoid any downtime cost to any misconfiguration or anything of that sort. So to wrap things up so that we can have some time to, I can take some of your questions because I see there's a couple. To wrap things up, Calico, we talked about the Kubernetes multi-tenancy. We talked about the two types of multi-tenancy. One is more internal for the tenants that are going to be using and consuming Kubernetes, and the other is external for your external customers or users. We talked about some of the challenges associated with running multi-tenancies, but also what is actually beneficial from that. I described 7 key areas that Calico Enterprise can help you achieve multi-tenant and secure environment. And we talked also about SOC-2 and how Calico Enterprise can help with that, especially if you're doing and offering a SaaS product. So in a nutshell, those are the 3 key pillars that I want to leave you with. Calico Enterprise can provide end-to-end visibility into your cluster with rich, with context-rich flow logs that can enable you to truly understand what's going on across different tenants, all while providing this network policy, workflows, and isolation. So before I wrap things up, just know that we have, actually we're going to be pretty active over the next couple of weeks. There's a long list of upcoming events here. Some are going to be, mostly our US time zone, but some are EU time zone. So feel free to kind of go to Tigera events and see for yourself and see if you are interested in attending those. Those are free trainings for you, as I said. So feel free to kind of go and register for those. And finally, if you have never worked with Calico Enterprise or haven't tried it, and you don't have the resources to do so, feel free to head to tigera.io/trial, and we provide you with a setup of Calico Enterprise on your favorite cloud, and you can go for yourself and see what it can offer in terms of end-to-end security for your network and Kubernetes network and yes, the visibility and troubleshooting, as well as network security for your Kubernetes cluster. With that, I know that I spoke a lot, and hopefully this was helpful. So I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen right now. I'm going to see if there's any questions in the Q&A area or in the chat area.